Absolutely. Here's an expanded, 500-word conversational segment for key point 1 teen. One of the most remarkable and unsettling things about narcissists is how acutely they can sense what's going on inside you, even when you're trying to hide it. It's almost as if they have this radar that picks up on subtle shifts in your energy, your posture, even the way your eyes move. And the reason they notice these things is simple. Their entire world revolves around control. They need to know whether you're still buying their version of reality or whether you're starting to see through the veil. When a narcissist senses that awareness, that little flicker of recognition that you're no longer fooled, it changes everything for them. It's not some mystical psychic power. It's much more practical than that. Narcissists spend so much of their lives observing and calculating the reactions of others. They study body language, tone of voice, micro-expressions, tiny cues that most of us wouldn't even notice. And they use that information like a cheat sheet. If your shoulders stiffen, if your voice becomes firmer, if your gaze stops flinching, they notice. These are all signs that you've started to reclaim yourself, that you're no longer just a passive participant in the story they're telling. And that realization can be terrifying for them. What's even more fascinating is how they respond when they pick up on this. Sometimes it's subtle, like a probing question designed to see if you'll slip back into old patterns. Sometimes it's more dramatic, a sudden burst of charm, an attempt to gaslight, or even a blatant accusation. Essentially, the narcissist is testing the waters to figure out how much do you really know and how much are you willing to assert. And here's the important part. The more you understand this, the less power their tests have over you. Awareness itself is protective. It's also why silence can be so powerful. You don't have to confront them directly or argue about their behavior. Simply holding your ground, maintaining your calm, showing consistency in your boundaries, communicates volumes. Narcissists can feel it. They pick up on that shift immediately. And once they know, the dynamic is no longer the same. Suddenly, you are no longer invisible and your recognition is in itself a form of strength. So the first thing to remember is this: they can sense it when you see through them, but that doesn't mean you're at a disadvantage. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Every micro-expression, every subtle sign that you are aware is a message you're sending to them: I see you. And that alone begins to shift the balance of power. Never underestimate the impact of quiet, steady awareness. It's far more potent than any argument or confrontation. Because in the end, the moment a narcissist realizes, everything changes. And that awareness, that simple, unwavering recognition, is where your strength begins. If you want, I can also expand key point 2 in the same 500-word live conversational style, so the speech can start flowing seamlessly from awareness into confidence. That way, you'll have the next segment ready to deliver. Do you want me to do that? Absolutely. Here's a 500-word conversational expansion of key point 2, flowing naturally from the previous segment. Once a narcissist senses that you see through their tactics, the next thing they start to pay attention to is not just what you know, but how you carry yourself. It's almost like they're reading a map of your inner state through your outward behavior. Every small change in the way you speak, the confidence in your posture, the firmness of your boundaries, these things are like beacons to them. And the reason they notice it so intensely is because they thrive on uncertainty. A narcissist needs to feel that they are in control, that they can predict and manipulate the people around them. When you begin to show clarity and self-assurance, it's a sign to them that their control is slipping and they feel exposed. Now, here's the interesting part. They don't just respond to your words, they respond to the energy behind your words. If you speak calmly but assertively, they can feel that you're no longer reactive in the ways they expect. If your tone conveys calm confidence rather than fear or guilt, it's like a spotlight shining on their attempts to manipulate. Narcissists are incredibly sensitive to these cues because they spent so much of their lives watching others, figuring out how to get their way. Your confidence acts as a mirror, reflecting back the awareness they were hoping to hide from the world. It's why the tiniest shifts in how you show up matter so much. Even something as simple as maintaining steady eye contact when they try to gaslight you sends a powerful message: I see you, and I'm not afraid. Adjusting your boundaries, standing firm in your decisions, or simply not engaging in their baiting behaviors communicates more than any argument ever could. It signals that you are present, aware, and unwilling to participate in their games. And believe me, they notice every subtle change. At the same time, it's important to understand that this awareness isn't about being confrontational or aggressive. Confidence doesn't mean dominance, it means groundedness. It means knowing where you stand, esteem, understanding your worth, and being consistent in your responses. Narcissists can detect hesitation, uncertainty, or self-doubt immediately, and they will exploit it, esteem. But when your confidence is steady, unshakable, and clear, it acts like a shield. It doesn't just protect you, it signals that their usual tactics will no longer work, esteem. And that is incredibly threatening to them. So the key takeaway is this: your inner confidence speaks louder than any words. Every time you act from clarity and self-assurance, esteem, you are sending a powerful message that you are aware and you are not manipulable. Narcissists can sense it, and that awareness begins to shift the balance, esteem. The more grounded and consistent you are, the less power they have to sway you. Because in the end, confidence is not just about standing tall, esteem, it's about being untouchable in your recognition of the truth. And when a narcissist sees that, everything changes. If you want, I can continue this by expanding key point 3 next, esteem. So the speech keeps building naturally from awareness to confidence to patterns. That will help you develop a full, seamless delivery for the talk. Do you want me to do that? Esteem. Here's a 500-word conversational expansion of key point 3, seamlessly flowing from the previous segments. Once you've recognized a narcissist and begun showing confidence, esteem, the next thing you start to notice is just how predictable they really are. Narcissists live in patterns. Their behaviors, their manipulations, even their moments of charm and rage, esteem, tend to follow cycles. And this is actually good news for you because patterns are what make them legible once you pay attention. They may try to appear spontaneous or erratic, esteem, but underneath it all, their behaviors are highly structured. They repeat what works to get their way, and they escalate when it doesn't. When you begin to see those patterns, esteem, the narcissist notices immediately that you are no longer an easy target. That little spark of recognition, that awareness that you're studying them as much as they've been studying you, esteem, is like a silent alarm going off. They know when you can predict their next move, and that terrifies them because their power relies on unpredictability and control. Esteem, they rely on keeping you off balance, keeping you uncertain. The moment you start seeing the same playbooks unfold, the gaslighting, the idealization, the devaluation, esteem, they realize their usual tactics are losing effectiveness. It's fascinating because this is where their reaction changes. Some narcissists will escalate their efforts, esteem, trying to catch you off guard with new tactics, pushing harder to see if you'll slip back into old responses. Others might withdraw, esteem, realizing that their manipulation is being resisted and that they need to reassess. The important point is that when you understand patterns, you take away the element of surprise, esteem. You stop reacting instinctively, and that shifts the balance of power. Recognizing patterns also allows you to step back and observe without immediately engaging, esteem. You can see the cycle before it completes, anticipate the moves, and choose your response strategically. Narcissists pick up on this too, esteem. They can sense when their usual triggers aren't eliciting the reactions they expect. Your calm observation is another cue that they've been exposed, esteem. And the more consistent you are in noticing these cycles without getting swept up in them, the more they realize that you are no longer under their control. Patterns, in a way, esteem, give you a roadmap. They show you where the narcissist has predictable behaviors, and that knowledge empowers you. It's not about trying to manipulate them in return, esteem. It's about protecting yourself, maintaining boundaries, and understanding the rhythm of their tactics. Once you know the pattern, you are no longer reacting blindly, esteem. You are responding from a place of awareness, and that is threatening to a narcissist because it removes their leverage. So the takeaway here is simple but profound, esteem. Understanding patterns doesn't just help you anticipate behavior, it communicates to the narcissist that you are no longer naive, that you are aware, esteem, and that their usual games will not succeed. And when they realize that, the dynamic shifts irreversibly. Knowledge of patterns is not just insight, it's power. If you want, esteem, I can expand key point 4 next, keeping the same conversational, live-speaking style so the speech flows naturally from awareness to confidence to patterns to boundary testing. Esteem, this will build the momentum toward the most actionable insights. Do you want me to do that? Here's a 500-word conversational expansion of key point 4's esteem, flowing naturally from the earlier segments. Once a narcissist realizes that you see through them and that you understand their patterns, they don't just give up. Instead, esteem. What often happens is they begin to test the boundaries you've set. These tests aren't always obvious. Sometimes they're subtle, almost imperceptible. A slight push, a probing question, esteem, a veiled comment. It's all designed to gauge whether you will remain firm or if you'll slip back into old reactive patterns. Esteem. Think of it like a cat gently tapping a surface to see if it's safe before fully stepping on it. The narcissist is testing, and they are very good at it, esteem. These boundary tests are actually a sign that your awareness is making them uneasy. If you were still unaware, they wouldn't bother. They thrive on control and certainty. Esteem. Once they sense that control slipping, they want to measure exactly how far you've come. Will you respond emotionally? Will you doubt yourself? Esteem. Or will you stand your ground and act with calm clarity? Every little reaction you give them is being noted, and they will adjust their tactics based on what they see. Esteem. It's crucial to understand that these tests are not personal attacks, even though they feel that way. They are a reflection of the narcissist's fear of exposure. Esteem. The moment they realize they feel vulnerable, and vulnerability is uncomfortable for them. Testing the boundaries is their way of trying to regain a sense of control. Esteem, to see if they can still manipulate or provoke you. Recognizing that is empowering because it allows you to respond strategically rather than reacting out of anger, guilt, or fear. Esteem. And this is where your consistency becomes your strongest tool. When you respond deliberately without overreacting, you communicate volumes without saying a word. Holding your ground. Esteem. Maintaining calm and responding only when appropriate sends the narcissist a clear message: you are no longer an easy target. Each time you navigate their probes without losing composure. Esteem. You reinforce your boundaries and reduce their ability to unsettle you. They notice this, they feel it, and that is exactly what weakens their influence. Esteem. Another thing to remember is that testing is a constant process. Narcissists rarely stop, they are always assessing and reassessing. But when you are steady, esteem, you turn their tests into a mirror of their own behavior. Their efforts to unsettle you show you how far you've come, how aware you are, and how strong your boundaries have become. Esteem. It's not about winning or losing, it's about claiming your own psychological space and refusing to be manipulated. So the takeaway is this: boundary testing is not a threat to you, esteem. It's a confirmation of your growing power. Every subtle test they throw at you is a reflection of your awareness, your calm, and your consistency. When you respond from that grounded place, esteem, you not only protect yourself, but you also signal that you are no longer under their control. And that realization, that clear message, is where your true strength lies. If you want esteem, I can expand key point 5 next, keeping the same live, conversational style so the speech can continue building toward projection and deeper psychological insight. Esteem. This will keep the flow seamless for the audience. Should I go ahead with that? As the dynamic continues to shift and they realize their usual tactics aren't landing the way they used to, esteem, something else starts to happen, and this one can really throw you off if you're not prepared for it. They begin to accuse you of the very things they are doing. Suddenly, esteem, you're the manipulative one, you're the selfish one, you're the controlling one, you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or always starting problems. And if you don't understand projection, esteem, this can pull you right back into confusion. Projection is one of the most powerful psychological defense mechanisms a narcissist uses. When they feel exposed, esteem, when they sense that you see the gaslighting, the control, the inconsistency, they experience that as a threat. And instead of tolerating that discomfort, they relocate it, esteem. They take the very qualities they cannot face in themselves and assign them to you. It's not random, it's strategic, even if it's unconscious. If they can get you defending yourself, esteem, explaining yourself, doubting yourself, then the spotlight is no longer on them. Notice the timing. The accusations tend to intensify right after you've set a boundary, esteem, right after you've calmly called something out, or right after you've disengaged from one of their provocations. That's not a coincidence. That's data, esteem. It tells you that your awareness has landed. They know you know. And rather than admit it, they attempt to destabilize you by flipping the narrative. And here's the part that's so important, esteem. Projection only works if you accept the assignment. If you start scrambling to prove you're not what they're accusing you of, you're back in their arena, esteem. You're now focused on defending your character instead of observing their behavior. That's the trap. The moment you internalize their distorted version of you, they regain leverage, esteem. But when you understand projection, something powerful happens. Instead of absorbing the accusation, you step back and ask yourself, is this actually true, esteem? Or is this discomfort being handed to me? And more often than not, you'll see that what they're accusing you of mirrors exactly what they've been doing, esteem. The control they accuse you of is the control they're losing. The manipulation they claim you're engaging in is the manipulation that's no longer working for them, esteem. This is why awareness is so destabilizing to a narcissist, because once you see projection for what it is, it stops working. You no longer feel compelled to over-explain, over-apologize, esteem, or over-defend. You can simply observe it and choose not to participate. And that refusal, calm, steady, grounded, esteem, is incredibly threatening to someone who relies on confusion to maintain control. Projection is not proof that you are flawed. It is proof that they feel exposed. Esteem. It is the psychological smoke that rises when their illusion starts to burn. So when the accusations start flying, don't panic. Don't rush to defend. Step back, breathe, esteem, and remember what's really happening. Because the moment you stop accepting their projection is the moment their narrative begins to collapse. And when their projection no longer sticks, esteem, their power no longer holds. And then we arrive at the final shift, the one that changes the entire dance. Because make no mistake, a relationship with a narcissist is a dance, esteem. For a long time, you may not even realize you're moving to their rhythm. They lead with charm, control with confusion, escalate with anger, soften with affection. And you adjust, esteem. You compensate, you try to keep the peace. But the moment they know you know, the choreography falls apart. Once awareness enters the room, the dynamic is never the same again, esteem. When a narcissist realizes you see the gaslighting, the patterns, the projection, the tests, they understand that the illusion is cracking. And illusion is everything to them, esteem. So now they have choices, they may escalate. The behavior might become more intense, more erratic, more punishing. That's an attempt to shock you back into compliance, esteem. Or they may pivot to charm, suddenly attentive, apologetic, even vulnerable. That's an attempt to pull you back into hope. Sometimes they withdraw altogether, going cold, distant, or silent, esteem. That's an attempt to regain control through absence. But here's what's different now: you're watching. You're no longer inside the fog. You're observing it, esteem. And that changes your nervous system. You're less reactive. You pause before responding. You don't chase the validation the way you used to. You don't scramble to fix what they break, esteem. And that shift, calm, grounded, deliberate, is deeply destabilizing to someone who depends on your emotional reactivity. This is the exposure phase. Not exposure in the dramatic public sense, esteem, but psychological exposure. They know that you can see the mechanics now. They know that when they say something hurtful and then deny it, you recognize it as gaslighting, esteem. They know that when they suddenly become affectionate after mistreating you, you see the cycle. And that awareness means they can no longer operate unconsciously around you. Now, esteem, this doesn't mean they transform. Awareness does not magically make a narcissist accountable. What it does is change you. And when you change, esteem, the relationship has to reorganize itself around your new reality. Sometimes that means it becomes more volatile. Sometimes it fizzles out, esteem. Sometimes it becomes emotionally distant but more predictable. Every situation is different. But here is the truth you need to hold onto. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it, esteem. And that's your power. Because the real shift is not about controlling them. It's not about winning. It's not about proving anything. It's about reclaiming your psychological autonomy, esteem. It's about understanding that their behavior is data, not destiny. You stop personalizing every jab. You stop internalizing every accusation. You stop negotiating with manipulation, esteem. You become steady. And when you are steady, the dance changes. You're no longer moving to their rhythm. You're choosing your own pace. You're choosing your own boundaries, esteem. You're choosing whether you even stay on the dance floor at all. So if you take nothing else from this, take this: the moment a narcissist knows you know is not the beginning of your fear, esteem, it's the beginning of your freedom.